This is The Sports Life.
Benny McGowan now at center. Jack Allen in the backfield to help with the blocking. Handoff to LJ, trying to shed Hawkeyes and trying to turn to the goal line. Puts the football over the goal line. He's in. Touchdown, MSU. What an amazing, amazing run by LJ Scott. It's a game of inches, and he got all he had to get.
And welcome into the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler. A great moment from the Big Ten football season of 2015. And as George Blaha said, it's a game of inches. He got everyone he needed, did L.J. Scott. And that was just called The Drive as they were playing Iowa and Michigan State for the Big Ten championship. With 9:04 to go, Michigan State goes 22 plays, 82 yards, 17 of those rushes, directed by a quarterback that had a bum shoulder and couldn't throw. And at the very end, they win the game.
Simply iconic. And how much fun for Michigan State fans was the year 2015. And hey, speaking of fun, this show is going to be a lot of fun. It starts off with a heavy dose, though, of a serious topic, the Title IX lawsuits that are coming out against the NCAA with this House settlement. We're going to be joined by Deb Schneider, a friend of the program, to break down what this means and what is the case. Also, we have a great cover story that's going to reside in Happy Valley, bringing you one of the most iconic voices in Big Ten sports. That's Steve Jones. And finally, we'll wrap up by taking a look at unnecessary research, a compilation of all the national telecasts broadcasted throughout sports history, and Tony Miller, the man who puts it all together.
Well, as we go to our Sounds of the Week, we salute a year as we count backwards to the kickoff of the season. And so, Dalton, we have now worked our way to saluting the year 2015.
That's right, and 2015 will be remembered in a lot of ways as the year of Michigan State. Look, it's not too often that a school makes the college football playoff in a season and win the Big Ten in that year, and also make the Final Four in basketball, and that's what Michigan State did in 2015. So let's go ahead and start with a couple of the ways they even got to the Big Ten championship game in football. In Columbus, at the Horseshoe, Michael Geiger would kick a field goal to split the uprights, knock off Ohio State in a major upset, and as you might remember, sent him windmilling down the sidelines. Here's the final call with George Blaha.
5'8", 186-pound junior, Michael Geiger. The snap, the put down, the kick is on the way, and the kick is...
He hits it!
Good.
He hits it!
It's good! It's good! The Spartans win! The Spartans win in Columbus! Down go the Buckeyes.
Yeah, they did, and that was a heck of a kick for a kid from Toledo, Ohio. And that's kind of thing you dream about if you're a place kicker, especially if you're a Buckeye and you're going into Ohio State. But think about that year for Michigan State. They wound up going 12-1 for the regular season. They won their first 8, lost barely at Nebraska. And then the big game, though, was the next game. They beat Maryland, but that was where their starting quarterback, Connor Cook, hurt his shoulder, and he never was right the rest of the way. And despite all of that, they still managed to win a Big Ten championship and get into the college football playoffs.
And believe it or not, the luck doesn't really run out there for the Spartans. You thought that was a Hail Mary of a situation. How about this one? In Ann Arbor against the rival Michigan Wolverines, down to the final 10 seconds and trailing. And Michigan gets ready to punt, and well, you know the rest. It's trouble with the snap. Here's the call.
10 seconds left. And let me tell you, folks, nobody is deep. Spartans coming after him. Bad snap. Bobble. Scooped up. Here come the Spartans. Down the sideline. Racing into the end zone.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Racing into the end zone is Jalen Watts Jackson. Touchdown, MSU.
Touchdown!
Folks, no flags. The Spartans
Oh, my God!
piling on each other in the end zone. It's over. The Spartans win again. The Spartans win again.
George, what a call. My God. My God. How did that happen?
It did. It just happened.
We still don't really have the answer.
We don't have the answer to Jason Srion's question. We don't know how it happened. It just did.
Well, a moment as iconic as that, you know there were a couple of different versions. With the jubilation and just astonishment and happiness for Michigan State, there was also the absolute heartbreak of loss on the Michigan side. Let's go into the Michigan radio booth with Jim Brandstatter and relive those final moments.
There's nobody back there to field the ball. Oh, he fumbled the ball. Now he fumbled it in the air, and it's picked up by Michigan State at the 20, the 15, the 10, and he's going to score. No time left. You've got to be kidding me. That you could not write. Michigan had the game on the line, on the foot, and Michigan State wins it. I don't know what to say.
So, Dalton, it's interesting. Jim Brandstatter says, I don't know what to say. Jason Strayhorn in the MSU booth is going, how did that happen? Nobody can absolutely comprehend what they just saw.
Everybody was stunned. And I just have the visual image of the surrender cobra that went so popular after this one, of the student with the hands on the head. And maybe that's the best image to keep in your mind as you hear the next call of a couple of Michigan students who had the broadcast call.
O'Neal muffed the football, and he can't get away with it. And Michigan State running down the left sideline. Needing a block, and the Spartans are going to win the football game. Touchdown, Michigan State. Are you kidding me? Michigan State wins the football game as the Spartans break the hearts of the Wolverine faithful. It was the safety, Jalen Watts-Jackson, who took it away as O'Neal bobbled the snap, and Michigan State breaks the heart of Michigan fans.
Oh, my God.
Boy, God got a lot of work out of this thing, right? He's saying, oh, my God. Strayhorn's going, oh, my God. It was just amazing because it happened so quick. I mean, let's face it. Anybody there got to see one of the greatest plays in the history of college football. But it was interesting when you look at that magic 10 seconds and that 38-yard return by Jalen Watts-Jackson. When you think about the magic year MSU had in football in 2015, that was the second time that they had two games they won on the last play. We talked about the Ohio State one on the field goal, and this one against Michigan.
What a magic carpet ride that was in 2015 for Michigan State football. And you could say for basketball as well. It's a squad that as a 7 seed in the dance made its way to the Final Four where they would play in Indianapolis. But during the regular season, one of the crowning moments came on February 14th, which is, if I'm not mistaken, Valentine's Day. And what would you know? It'd be Denzel Valentine's Day as he hit this game winner against Ohio State.
10 seconds, we're going for it. Trice has it. In the wing. Goes over to Nairn. Not a Valentine for the win. He got it!
Wow, what a big-time shot by Valentine. That was huge.
Huge is an understatement. It was so big. And that was such a fun team the whole year because, you know, every year there's a Final Four, and there's always that one team that surprises people. And that was the year that Michigan State surprised a lot of people to get to the Final Four. So, but you have shots like that from great players like Valentine. I mean, on Valentine's Day, really?
It doesn't get much more poetic, does it?
Yeah, that was a pretty good day. Good day for the Sparties.
And you talk about 2015 and that Final Four. Well, one of the teams who a lot of people thought may end up in Indianapolis in that Final Four was also from the Big Ten, and they did. It was Wisconsin. They made it to the Final Four. They had to take on 38-0 Kentucky in the national semifinal game. They would knock off the Wildcats in what was a huge upset and a huge moment in college basketball. Here's what the final seconds sounded like with Jim Nance on TV.
A lot of stunned faces in the Kentucky fan section as the shot is launched. There will be no undefeated champion on Wisconsin with an unbelievable stretch drive to the championship game.
Well, that was a heck of a game. 71-64. The Badgers win that and move on to play Duke for the national championship. And Dalton has heard me complain about this game and the officiating forever, so I'm not going to do a lot of that here. But I will say one thing about that Wisconsin basketball team. That was one of the best basketball teams I've ever seen. Stay with us. Back with more in a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little? But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
Every kid deserves a chance to feel safe, to have their own bed, to be loved and cared for. That's why I love my foster parents. They make me feel like part of the family.
Raise hope and foster dreams for one of 13,000 Michigan children in foster care. Visit michigan.gov/hope for a home or call 855-MICH-KIDS. That's 855-MICH-KIDS. Sponsored by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
Do you hear that? That's the sound of uncertainty lurking under your hood. You know the feeling. I know I do. That sudden sinking sensation when you see a check engine light or your car unexpectedly breaks down and you're faced with sky-high repair bills. It's time to shield against unexpected repairs with CarShield. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company and has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau. Don't let the fear of a breakdown keep you up at night. Trust the Shield, CarShield, and say goodbye to terrifying repair bills and hello to peace of mind. Your plan also comes with 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing, rental car options, and so much more. Don't wait till it's too late. Call CarShield now before a breakdown. Protect your wallet. Protect your car with CarShield. Get our best protection ever. Call now. You'll thank me later. 800-965-1292. 800-965-1292. That's 800-965-1292.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Roxanne Watson is on a mission.
Hello, how are you doing today?
She wants more people to register as organ, eye, and tissue donors.
Are you an organ donor?
Yes, I am.
Yay. My goal is to sign up the most people in the United States.
What drives her? Roxanne's own life was saved through the gift of a heart transplant, made possible by an organ donor.
I decided that day that I was going to devote myself to the cause of organ donation and signing people up and honoring my donor by doing that.
Now she's back to health, and she's a powerful force helping to save lives every day through her work. Imagine what you can make possible by leaving behind the gift of life.
8 people can be helped with the major organs, and up to 50 people can be helped with a little bit of everything. And when you think about it that way, that you could help that many people, it's amazing. It really is.
Learn more and sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Team here along with Dalton Shetler. And don't forget Auto Owners Insurance. Simple human sense. Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners make sense for you. Well, last week on the Sports Life, we were joined by Deb Schneider, a sports law attorney with Fishman Stewart, who is also an adjunct professor at Michigan State and Wayne State Universities. Our topic of conversation last week was the ruling of California District Judge Claudia Wilken and how it addressed the 3 federal antitrust lawsuits that affect the way revenues are going to be distributed possibly to the current and former college athletes. Well, on that program last week, Deb Schneider felt it would not be long before a Title IX lawsuit would surface, and it has. So, Deb, welcome back to the show. And could you explain what this new Title IX lawsuit is all about?
Absolutely. And thank you again for having me. I feel like I'm going to be a regular with this Title IX and House settlement. So, getting into it, basically what happened is once House was settled, and it was the House versus the NCAA settlement, that settled on Friday. It took less than a week for some female athletes, in particular, 8 female athletes, filed an appeal of that settlement, and they were arguing that the agreement violated Title IX. The first repercussion of this lawsuit is that all the damage payments, that $2.8 billion that is to be provided for the back pay, if you will, to those athletes is now on hold. So it's important to look at what's going on this. We have the House settlement, which really has two parts, as we talked. One is the damage payments, the back pay. The second is the going forward and the revenue share. This lawsuit, which was filed by these 8 women from Vanderbilt, the College of Charleston, and University of Virginia, is claiming that women have not been treated properly under Title IX because about 90% of the money is going to men's football and basketball, and then 5% is going to women's basketball, and everybody else is splitting 5%. They're in that everybody else category. So what we're looking at is realistically 102 million going to the women and 2.4 billion going to the men. Women are getting less than 10% of this money.
And so, Deb, as you mentioned that, let me just read what Title IX is. It became part of our dialogue in 1972, and simply, it is to ensure equal opportunities in education regardless of sex, which clearly this is not.
Yes.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, I'm curious what your interpretation is on this, Deb, because, I mean, obviously, Title IX in some of these conversations can always be a bit complex, but if it's really just about equal opportunity, do you think these females have a winning case here?
They do. I believe they do. Is it right? Is it equitable? That's an entirely different question. But when you go back to Title IX, just think about this. The NCAA actually opposed Title IX back in 1972. And then a few years later in the 80s, the NCAA and men's sports supporters tried to get Title IX to not apply to men's football and basketball because that was the largest piece of any college athletic program. That was over. Through lawsuits and that, it was determined that Title IX applied to all sports equally. So now we have the requirement that you have to have equal opportunity regardless of the sport or the revenue it brings in. President Biden had issued an executive order which said that he did believe that administration believed that Title IX did apply to the House settlement. That was rescinded when President Trump came into office. But at this point, we're left with basically a vacuum. We don't really know. What we have is that there's really no clear legal authority on how to share the revenue. So in my opinion, we have to look at that equal opportunity. I think there's an argument that equal opportunity is based on sheer numbers. I think there's also an argument that equal opportunity is based on the revenue that's brought in. So it cuts both ways, and I think we're going to see a lot of lawsuits on this.
So it's interesting, Deb, by one definition, it's strictly numbers of participants. The other one you just brought up is value, market value, true market value. So at the end of the day, which one of those went out?
I guess we're just going to have to see. Like I said, there's really no legal precedent on this. We know under Title IX, you can't prioritize one gender over the other. We're trying to ensure equitable and proportional access to NIL opportunities and to this revenue, the revenue share as well as the back pay. It's difficult to say which one's going to win out. I think that there's going to be legislation ultimately on this, which is going to determine it. Otherwise, we're going to be in court pretty much for the rest of our lives because either position has an argument for it. So it's going to be difficult to come up with an answer on that one.
So, Deb, if you're an athletic director at a major university running an athletic department, is it almost impossible to really figure out the right direction?
I think yes, absolutely. That is a great question, Will. It is a job I would not want to have right now. That being said, athletic directors are in a bit of a conundrum. They need to provide the funds. If we're looking at the revenue share aspect, they need to provide funds based on what they're bringing in. And in order to be competitive, they're going to have to pay more for men's football, men's basketball, for women's basketball than the other sports. It makes sense from that market value argument. However, the athletic directors, if they're looking at opportunities and they're saying, what kind of opportunity can we offer? If they have workshops, education, training, any resources on NAL, that it would be prudent to provide those in with equal opportunities, so equitable and proportionate access to those aspects of it. And then maybe we just sit and wait and see how this plays out in the future. Because it is, in my opinion, this is a very unsettled area of this lawsuit.
Well, as always, Deb, appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's always delightful to talk to the two of you.
Deb Schneider, a sports law attorney with Fishman Stewart, along with being an adjunct professor at Michigan State and Wayne State Universities. Well, coming up next, a profile piece on one of the great voices in the history of Big Ten sports. It's all coming up when the Sports Life continues.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
Here's a real-life story that affects 50% of all of us out there. It's called divorce. If you've gotten divorced and now you're struggling to pay your bills and your credit card debts are completely out of control, you need to call this special debt relief hotline right now. We help people with all kinds of money problems caused by different life challenges, a divorce, a job loss, even heavy medical bills. All these life events can sometimes financially stress you out and cause you to get out of control. We help people get their lives back by showing them ways to consolidate and reduce their debt, in some cases for a fraction of what they owe. If your credit card balances are more than $10,000, call us and learn how to reduce your credit card bills and monthly payments now. Here's our number.
Paid for by Debt.com. Call now, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584. That's 800-810-1584.
That ought to do it. Totally energy efficient.
Oh no, not again. This time, we're getting help.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the battle of energy efficiency improvements. In this corner, Mr. I can save money and do it on my own. And in this corner, Miss Let's get it done right with some help. Fight! Or you could just go to avoidenergydrama.com. From sealing your home to helpful loan options, you'll find all the tips and tools you need to stop wasting energy and stay comfortable. Avoidenergydrama.com. Brought to you by Michigan Saves.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see. Depression won't show up on an eye chart, and you can't measure it on your bathroom scale. Sorting out a mental health concern is not something to attempt on your own. You won't find a bipolar disorder by looking at a thermometer. Like many other health conditions, help for mental illness takes professional diagnosis and treatment. Anxiety won't just go away under a stick-on bandage. So the sooner you seek treatment, the better. If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. Find out what to do. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support. That's samhsa.gov/support.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Live. Will Teeman here along with Dalton Shetler. Well, despite the numerous cosmetic changes the Big Ten Conference has endured, it still can hang its hat on some generational traditions. Now, one of those traditions is having some of the most iconic radio voices in sports broadcasting, spreading the Big Ten gospel over the airwaves every season. Now, Penn State has been the home of one of those iconic radio voices for over 4 decades. His name is Steve Jones. So, where did his journey begin?
Well, it turns out that my father's uncle was in charge of the herd, that's cattle, here at Penn State. And when I was a kid, we came out here a few times. In fact, the first time I came out here, Joe Paterno was not the head football coach, Rip Engel was. And they took us over to the stadium, and I looked around and saw the stadium, and I thought, this is just the greatest place. And at that point in my life, even though I grew up in New England, I grew up 8 miles south of the Basketball Hall of Fame in Enfield, Connecticut. When I first saw that, I went, wow, I'm a Penn State fan. And I followed Penn State all the way through. And then, of course, I would listen to games on the radio in Connecticut, and all those 50,000 watt booming stations I could hear all across the country, especially in baseball, where I could hear the great announcers, Jack Buck and Chuck Thompson and Bill O'Donnell and Ned Martin and all those guys, Harry Callis and so forth. I think, wow, what a great job. And I was so naive, I never once thought you got money for it. So I just thought it'd be great. I get to go to the games. And I mean, that's where the love affair with all this came up. And of course, down the road, I thought, geez, it would be really great if it ever worked out where I could announce Penn State games. And for me, it fell into place, and I've been so fortunate with the opportunities I've had.
Steve Jones, the undergrad, began his PSU career at Penn State Wilkes-Barre. The campus had 4 buildings, but it also had a 10-watt radio station, and that's where Steve got to broadcast his first game.
When I was done with that game, I said, man, I would love to do this the rest of my whole life. And it went by, the 2 hours went by, it felt like in 10 minutes. And that really was for me where I said, boy, I've got to do everything I can to see if I can possibly do something like this.
Then after 2 years, it was off to the main Penn State campus, where he got his first big break.
Well, Penn State played #1 ranked Pitt in football in 1981, and the game was Thanksgiving weekend. And Fran Fisher was the voice of Penn State football and basketball at the time. And Penn State, because they were playing that day, they needed somebody to fill in for Fran on basketball. And at that point, I was doing women's basketball. And they'd heard me do women's basketball, and they thought, hey, this guy would be a fine fill-in. Let's have him do that. And it's one of those days where Penn State beat Pitt and Dan Marino 48-14, and Pitt was ranked #1 at the time. Meanwhile, I had the Penn State Bloomsburg game, and Penn State also had 48 points in that game, and they won 48-47. But that was my first broadcast, and then later on, they needed me to fill in for a game with Nebraska. And I did that, and Fran decided to retire from basketball after the 81-82 season. And because I'd filled in and done well enough, they elevated me.
In 2000, Steve Jones became the voice of not only Nittany Lion men's basketball, but football as well. Next up, some favorite moments.
When you've done it this long, Will, you know darn well there's a whole bunch of them along the way. I mean, I know in basketball, Penn State way back winning an Atlantic 10 championship and then beating UCLA in the 91 NCAA tournament up in the Carrier Dome, the Sweet 16 run in 2001, including win over North Carolina, a couple of NIT wins, in 9 and 18, the NCAA tournament run, including a Big Ten championship game run 2 years ago. And then in football, look, I got the front row seat to history. I got to call Paterno's 324th win to pass Bear Bryant, his 400th win, his 409th win, Big Ten championships in 5 and 8 and 16 along the way, Rose Bowl win, a couple Fiesta Bowl wins, Orange Bowl win. I mean, all big ones. Probably the signature one of all of them was the 2016 game with Ohio State. Penn State had gone through a lot here, as we all know. And there had been an us against the world mentality that existed here for a couple of years. And they're playing Ohio State in Beaver Stadium, and they came from behind, and now they've finally tied the game. And Ohio State set up for a field goal, and Marcus Allen blocked it.
Put down. Kick is up. It's blocked. On the turn, picked up by Haley. Haley in the 50, the 40, 30, 25, 20. Haley 10, 5. Touchdown, Penn State. Marcus Allen blocked it, and Grant Haley takes it to the house, and the Nittany Lions electrify Beaver Stadium and take the lead with 4:27 to go.
And Penn State, it was like 4:27 to go in the game when that happened, and put Penn State in front. And I felt like for the first time in years, there was a release of joy in the stadium. And the irony is that is the only time in the history of Penn State football, which goes back into the 1880s, that Penn State had ever blocked a field goal and run it back for a touchdown.
As Steve Jones mentioned, due to the Jerry Sandusky child sexual abuse scandal, it was not business as usual for Penn State. So, how did the front man for Penn State football handle this sensitive situation and somehow come out in one piece at the other end?
Well, it wasn't easy because I didn't get any advice. You got to look around for a little help here. And I didn't really get a lot of help. And I remember the Ohio, it was the Nebraska game. It was that week. And of course, for me, I was so close to Joe Paterno that it was crushing for me to see this happen to him. But we had a game that week. And so I don't open the broadcast. Roger Corey opens the broadcast. And I remember it was a noon game, and the game was going to be, we're on the air at 10:30. And Roger finally, 10 minutes before the broadcast, looked at me, Will, and said, I need to talk to you guys for a second. And I said, sure. He says, I don't know what to do. Well, I completely understood how he felt, right? I mean, he has to open the broadcast. He said, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, look, okay. I said, this is what we're going to do. I said, you just say, we're here at Beaver Stadium. Penn State's playing Nebraska, and here's the voice of the Nittany Lions, Steve Jones. I said, I'll take it from there. I said, nobody else talk. I said, at all. I said, and the reason I don't want anybody else to talk is if I foul this up, I'll be the only one that gets fired. The rest of you will be safe. Because when you're the lead person, that's your responsibility. And I said, I don't want any of you to get in trouble with anything that is said. I said, I'll do it. If I foul it, it's me, and I won't be here next week. And so when it came time to open, I explained what happened during the week. I explained the campus reaction, candlelight visuals, and so forth. I also explained that I was a father and a grandfather, and that nobody cared more deeply about children than I do, and that everybody in the booth happened to be fathers. And they said they care about children. I said, but at the same time, I said, I want everybody to understand and give us a little bit of leeway, because we are still going to be the ones that have to do a job today of announcing a game. And we're going to have to do the job next week of announcing the game. I said, allow us to do our jobs. We will do it with great respect, and we'll do it with great dignity, and the campus will move forward, and everybody will move forward. And I think that was about all I said, and then we went to a break. Well, obviously, whatever I did, either they didn't hear it or it was good enough. I got through to the next week, and I'm still here.
When Steve Jones speaks into a microphone, with it comes a piece of magic.
I do. Look, I love being there. And not only that, but it's okay. Before you open up the mic, you walk in the booth and you see all the people you have. But I also go down and see guys like you, right? Basketball, we always meet up. And it means a lot to me because everybody in this conference is we are a tight-knit group of announcers. That's why we get together in the off season. But the magic is the pure enthusiasm, passion, and love for the game and the love for the profession. I think that's what comes out when I start.
We should also mention that he taught at Penn State for over 20 years, and on the campus you can find the Steve Jones Student Broadcasting Complex. Steve Jones, legendary voice of the Penn State Nittany Lions, and an all-around good guy. Well, when we come back with more of the Sports Life, we're going to take a look at some numbers like we've never done it before, but first a break.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dad, did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little, but thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
So I graduated last year and got a job. Sweet! But it got boring. I didn't really have a purpose. Then I started volunteering with Community Action. It's a statewide network with 29 agencies across Michigan. Community Action helps people with food, housing, utilities, childcare, senior services, you name it. I found my purpose, helping people, changing lives. Won't you join me? Call 1-855-MI-ACTION or go to MichiganCommunityAction.org. Sponsored by Michigan Community Action and Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
This is a potter's field. When people can't pay for their funerals, they are buried here. It is a lonely, desolate place, littered with unmarked headstones. No one visits. No one leaves flowers. But it doesn't have to be that way. For as low as $1 a day, you can ensure your family will have the money to pay your funeral expenses. We offer burial insurance plans that pay up to $30,000. Considering the average funeral costs more than $10,000, that's peace of mind for your family. There are no medical exams, your rates won't increase, and your policy cannot be canceled as long as you make your premium payments. Call now to get approved in minutes and ensure your final resting place is more than just a pauper's grave in a potter's field.
800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. That's 800-562-2407. Paid for by Final Expense Direct.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just...
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Eddie, what would you have said the day you were drafted if I told you that 41 years to the day later, you would work your 1,000th national broadcast in the United States and Canada? Congratulations. Over 1,000 games as a player, thousands as a local broadcaster, and now 1,000 at the national level, the 12th person in all of sports in North America among analysts to work 1,000 career games on national television.
Honored and worked with great people. I've been lucky to be able to do that, and it's the greatest game in the world, and thank you for that. As Bush said earlier, I am old. That's all that equals.
I didn't say that. That's not what I said.
So thank you.
Congrats, Enzo. Way to go, man. You're the best. So the 12th person to appear on 1,000 English national NHL telecasts in the United States and Canada, thanks to Tony Miller, who runs the Unnecessary Sports Research site on social media and keeps track of those numbers.
So there you go. Kenny Albert's giving Ed Olczyk a little shout out there during their TNT coverage of the Stanley Cup. So you're probably wondering as you rejoin the Sports Life with Will Tiemann and Dalton Schiller, why are those guys talking about the NHL on the Big Ten channel, right? On a show about Big Ten sports?
That's right.
Well, number one, it's summer.
It's true.
But number two, it's always good to have a little bit of fun. And Kenny Alberts gave Tony Miller a shout-out as the guy ahead of the Unnecessary Sports Research Group. Of course, Dalton's aware of him because he was the sports information director at Goshen College for 7 years, where Dalton is a proud Maple Leaf, right?
That's right.
There you go. See,
you got it down.
Yeah, how about that, huh? And so since that time, Tony's become the basically the head stat guy for the whole athletic department. And so Tony is joining us. Tony, welcome. And before we go through some of these fun numbers, besides the fact that Eddie Olczyk just set this kind of special milestone as a broadcaster, welcome into the show. But I got to ask you first is, why are you doing this?
It's a great question, and one that I've probably asked myself a few times along the way. But the reason I started counting announcers is pretty much twofold. Number one, found a bunch of research that people had done. John Moynihan's no longer with us. Tim Bruley at the Pro Football Research Association probably knows more about football commentators than any living human right now. And I was a little surprised there weren't numbers, so I thought I should add some. But beyond that, the reality is that most of us don't get to play sports for a living. You know, we tune in to, in Ed Olczyk's case, the Blackhawks, or you guys are in Michigan, and there were an awful lot of people whose gateway to the Tigers was Ernie Harwell. And there are all sorts of stats out there about the people that play the game, but I felt like there should be some stats about the people that bring the game into our homes on a nightly basis.
Tony, I'm curious because this is quite the undertaking when you combine all the different pro major sports in North America and you're going through this. How many hours would you estimate this took to maybe put together?
I part of it is hard to tell because, like, I never set out to do all of this together. You just started. My first project was the Major League Baseball announcers, and then moved on to the NFL, and then it kept going. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, I've already got this data in Excel, and I bet I can make it do the math and, you know, add up that Bob Cole was on Hockey Night in Canada 1,700 times. And so I really have no idea how long it's taken. It's been a 14-year process, but it's never been the only thing that I do in life because it doesn't make any money. But it's one of those things that I'm kind of resigned myself to the fact that I will never actually finish the project. I will just run out of time to work on it.
Okay, since we're talking about hockey, we talked about Olczyk, 1,000 games on the national level as a commentator. Who leads the way on the national stage for the most play-by-play hockey games?
Well, that depends, because hockey is a fun sport in that really on a broadcasting level, it started north of the border. Hockey Night in Canada was a thing much before national hockey in the U.S. was a regular deal. So on the Canadian side, Bob Cole pretty much leads everything. He's at 1,722 games, which you figure, even if he was doing 80 games a season, that would be a lot of seasons. On the U.S. side, Mike Emmerich, probably to nobody's surprise, has more play-by-play appearances than anybody out there with 1,043. And then Bill Clement and Pierre Maguire are actually slightly ahead of Olczyk yet when you look only at the U.S. appearances, because Olczyk has had some games that got picked up in Canada as Rogers and TSN added that inventory to their broadcast packages as well.
Okay, who's the guy who's been, I guess, are we staying television here?
Yeah, all television.
National TV. Who's called the most baseball games?
Baseball games, as an analyst, it would be Joe Morgan, 885, which probably makes sense if you remember that he was on Sunday Night Baseball for 20 full years. But then Joe Buck actually passed John Miller in his last full season working for Fox. So Buck is at 638 play-by-play appearances.
Well, let's move over to the NBA because this one's got a little bit of news to it, because with Thursday's Game 6 of the NBA Finals in the rearview mirror now, Mike Breen's hit some milestones here.
Yeah, I think that definitely deserves a bang if he did it from three-point range. But that was Breen's 1,133rd NBA appearance. Marv Albert had 1,132. And, I mean, if Marv Albert was protective of his rankings, he'd be a little... he'd be feeling a little bit past here, because on the overall four major sports listings, his own son, Kenny, just passed him a couple of weeks ago, looking at combining football, basketball, hockey, and baseball. But Breen has 1,133 appearances. They're all on the play-by-play side. Albert had 1,131 as the play-by-play announcer, and also picked up a color commentary appearance on an ABC regional telecast where he was already in town to do the Knicks game in 1973.
Well, football and television on the national level were perfect for each other. So who's our leader there?
Was Pat Summerall for a long time, but he had split that between, he started as a color commentator, and then he became the play-by-play announcer, and paired pretty well with the verbosity that was the John Madden experience. Al Michaels has since passed him, just because Michaels has been doing play-by-play now for 40 years, and the seasons have only gotten longer. And also, Michaels didn't have that playing experience to start off as a color commentator, so he was in the play-by-play chair from the moment he joined Monday Night Football in the 80s, although Michaels actually started out as a baseball guy first and foremost.
By the way, I'm from Cincinnati, so Michaels was the voice of the Reds when I was growing up. There you go.
Yep.
And Joe Morgan, never thought he'd be a great announcer, but God, could he play second base.
Yeah, Morgan was a guy that knew the game inside and out. I think he might have been miscast as the small ball guy when the bulk of his broadcasting career came in what we look back on as the steroid era. But the man knew his X's and O's.
Also, as a personal aside, Tony Miller, besides being just the lead statistician authoritarian for Goshen College and really for the television national broadcast, he was also my sports director in college at the radio station. So if you don't like me very much, we're going to pivot the blame to Tony. So I think that's a good play moving forward. But I'm curious also, Tony, how you accept the blame, but... what were the other unique observations you had from compiling this list besides just the top of the leaderboards?
One of the things that actually kind of fits into both of those categories is, so like when we were in college, a lot of small college conferences will play their men's games and their women's games back to back in a double header. And while the Crossroads League is doing that now, at the time that wasn't the case. The same two schools would be playing at the other site. And that leans into something that comes up an awful lot during the regular season in national broadcasting, less so in the playoffs, which is to say that wherever you're sending, your Monday Night Football crew or Pat Summerall and John Madden, you've got to have other crews to work those games down the line. And so, if you look at the NFL play-by-play announcer list, you go down, okay, Al Michaels, Dick Stockton, Pat Summerall, but then right away you get to number 5 on the play-by-play list, and Kevin Harlan is somebody that has never done an NFL postseason game on TV, and he's at number 5 because every week you've got, 8, 9 games, as many as 13 regional games some weeks between the two networks, and somebody's got to do all of those. And if you're a diehard, sorry, I'm going to pick on the Jaguars fan, you don't see the top of the line crews real often, but somebody's still got to bring that game into your home.
Way to pick on the Jags. Come on. They're trying. Come on, Tony.
I mean, as two of the three of us on here grew up in Indiana, we're somewhat familiar with the fact that the AFC South as a whole is not comprised of the largest markets in the NFL.
It's true.
Okay, Tony, before we let you go, is there some sort of oddball or unique number that we wouldn't ask you about that's kind of cool?
I think the one that I think about that's well, cool is a relative term because you have to be a little bit you've got to think about this in a fairly special way for it to click in your head at any sort of level. But the one that I look at is you add everything up, we're actually pushing close to 60,000 national telecasts. At the end of the week last week, we're at 59,413. And you just go back, you go back to our first broadcasts in the 40s and 50s. And I don't know that anybody would have envisioned that we get anywhere close to 60,000 games or 180,000 hours, if it's 3 hours of broadcast, of how many of these games it has a lot to do with how these sports have become our national pastime, and in fact our binational pastime if you're looking at Canada. I don't know that anybody could have foreseen that football would have been the bigger draw ratings wise than baseball when they started doing this in the 50s, and just speaks to how much that's become a ubiquitous part of our culture.
Well, Tony, we appreciate you stopping by. These numbers are a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go, a fun chat with Tony Miller, the head of the Unnecessary Sports Research. And that's a pretty accurate title, but it's still fun to talk about some of this. And when you think about it, Dalton, I really liked his one point. Who would have guessed back in the, say, 40s when they started doing some baseball on TV, that it would grow into this industry that it is today? It's crazy.
It really is. Talking about how many national broadcasts and telecasts there's been. I mean, it's simply amazing to think about. And honestly, who knows how many of those sports moments would be imprinted or affected differently legacy-wise without those voices that have been there to accentuate it all along the way.
It's amazing. And that's just the TV part, and that's just the national part of the TV part.
Right.
I think we get a lot of exposure for these things.
That's right.
That's what I'm thinking. Well, when we come back with more of the sports life, our parting shots in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
So I graduated last year and got a job. Sweet! But it got boring. I didn't really have a purpose. Then I started volunteering with Community Action. It's a statewide network with 29 agencies across Michigan. Community Action helps people with food, housing, utilities, childcare, senior services, you name it. I found my purpose, helping people, changing lives. Won't you join me? Call 1-855-MI-ACTION or go to MichiganCommunityAction.org. Sponsored by Michigan Community Action and Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
If you have diabetes, listen up. If you have insurance, you can qualify for a continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends and spend more time in range, significantly lowering your A1C. More importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today. If you use insulin and if you've seen your diabetes care provider within the last 6 months, you may qualify for your own CGM right now. We'll do all the insurance paperwork and deliver your new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost to you. Medicare and most insurances will cover your CGM, so don't wait. Have your insurance handy and call the Aptiva Medical CGM Health Hotline right now.
800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. That's 800-948-6912.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is the Sports Life.
Anybody ready for a burger?
I'm State Fire Marshal Rich Miller, reminding everyone to think safety first when it comes to outdoor grilling, whether it's charcoal or gas. Never overload your grill with food. Excess fat and grease will create large flames. Grill outdoors and never inside or in a garage. Never leave a grill unattended and always keep a fire extinguisher nearby. For more tips on safe grilling, visit the Bureau of Fire Services website at michigan.gov/BFS.
Medicaid and CHIP offer free or low-cost health coverage for children and teens. Hospital and doctor visits, prescriptions, shots, and more are covered. That's peace of mind for parents if a child is sick or gets injured. And parents may now be eligible for Medicaid too, even if they've applied in the past. Enrollment is always open. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 1-877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler. Interesting show we've had this week.
I would say so. And if you missed any of this week's show or you just want to hear some more again, make sure you give us a follow on Twitter or X at Sports Life Now. That's again at Sports Life Now. You can find all the interviews. We talked with Deb Schneider towards the beginning of the show to discuss the Title IX lawsuits coming against the NCAA and this House settlement. We also brought a cover story to you of one of the great iconic voices in Big Ten sports, Steve Jones, the voice of the Penn State Nittany Lions. And we brought you some unnecessary numbers with unnecessary sports research. Big thanks to Tony Miller for joining us to break down some of the broadcasters who have been calling the games that you know and love.
So now we've worked our way to our parting shots. And as always, we start off with Dalton.
Yeah, and for the parting shot, Will and I were talking about this, and we're actually going to combine ours here because this is a little bit of fun. And hey, it's June. We're going to have a little bit of fun with it. Sickos Committee. I've referenced them before. It's one of my favorite follows on Twitter or X. It's a group of college football fans that really just kind of love the minutia and oddities that college football will provide. Well, they put together a graphic recording the most punts by FBS football teams since 1999, and the stats come courtesy of Sports Reference. So they put together a top 15. You have 3 Big Ten teams in this top 15 for the most punts since 1999. Give a shout out to Iowa, who comes in 11th on this list with 1,707. Then here's the rest of the top 5. We have 2 Big Ten teams in the top 5. Northwestern is number 5. 1,738 punts since 1999 for the Wildcats. In 4th place, it's Louisiana Monroe, 1,742. Wake Forest comes in at 3rd with 1,746. Boston College is 2nd with 1,762. And for the most punts since 1999, it's the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, 1,770. But there's a look at some of the busiest punters all around college football since 1999 for our parting shot.
So with that, we appreciate everybody joining us this week. And we should also note that you can find us wherever you find your podcasts like SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, and make sure to check us out and hit subscribe. As always, thanks to the Big Ten Network. The Sports Life is produced by Dalton Shetler, and our executive producer is Wendy Hart. So on behalf of Dalton Shetler, I'm Will Tiemann, and thanks for your time.